Hello everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at some loops in JavaScript. We're going to take a look at a for loop, for of loop, for in loop, while loop, do while loops, break statements, and a continue statement. So let's get right to it. Cool. So first thing we're going to start off by is taking a look at our for loop. First, before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and set up two data structures for us here. One, I'm going to go ahead and set up a words array, and I'm just going to have a bunch of random words in there. Let's go ahead and open our brackets for the array. Cool. Nice. Beautiful. Cool. And now let's set up an object. And in this object, I'm just going to put a whole bunch of my personal information. So let's go with Nevram. Cool. For age, let's go with 30. All right, awesome. All right, now let's go ahead and start off with that for loop. So whenever we're working with a for loop is made up of three parts. One, we need that keyword for, and then inside of the parentheses right after the for loop, one, we need an initializer. A very common one that people use is a variable I for index, I guess. Second thing we need for the for loop is our condition. So our condition, since we want to iterate over our array of words array, we're just going to do I is less than words array dot length, and then we just need to go ahead and increment our I variable, so we don't have an infinite loop. Once we do that, once we're in here, if we want, we could just go ahead and do a console.log of well, first of all, let's start by logging the I variable so we can kind of see what's going on with that. So if we run node, we get 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So we started off at 0, and then again it's just a loop, so it just iterates over and over. It just prints I for us at each iteration. So if we wanted to print out what's actually inside of our array, we do words array bracket I, save that, run it. And now we get everything inside of our words array. We're able to iterate over everything and just log it to the console. So if let's say we didn't want to start off at index 0, we wanted to start iterating starting at index 1, all we have to do is come here, change our initializer to 1. Oh, I put an I, but 1. Save it. Now it should print out cool, nice, and beautiful. Cool, nice, and beautiful. And let's say we wanted to change the order that we're iterating over our array. Let's say we wanted to iterate over our array in reverse order. At that point, we would do something like, for the initializer, we do let I equals words array dot length, and then for this we would say I is greater than 0, and now we would have to do I minus minus. Okay, and now if we go ahead and log this, it should log everything in the array except in reverse order. Cool. We get undefined, beautiful, nice, and cool. Okay. Why are we getting undefined for? Awesome. Here, let's take a look at it. So we set I equals to words array dot length. So that would be 4. Oh, I think I see our issue here. I think if we do -1 is greater than or equal to 0. Save it. Cool. All right, so that's how we would go about reversing the order for our for loop. Yes, that's mainly it for the for loop. Now let's hop into the for end loop. For end loops, people mainly use it to iterate over, I guess you could say, whatever values you have inside of your object. So if you do for L and obj, so the L variable is going to take place of all of the keys we have in our object. So first name, last name, and age. So if, for example, let's say we come here and do a console.log of L, save that and run, we get all of our keys of the object printed to the terminal. First name, last name, and age. So if we wanted all of our values, all we would do is something like obj bracket L, save, and now we're able to iterate over our object all the values of the keys in our object. Cool. So we looked at the for loop, looked at the for end loop. And the for of loop, I kind of look at it as just a shorthand way of doing a for loop, except we don't have access to the index variable. Okay, so we could go ahead and do this. We could do for L of words array, I think it was called. There we go. And we could just do console.log L. And that should print out everything we have in our words array. Let's comment this out, run. Cool, awesome, cool, nice, and beautiful. All right, so that's mainly the gist of it for the for of loop. Yeah, again, I kind of just look at it as a shorthand way of doing a traditional for loop, except you don't have access to the index variable. Okay, in the for end loop, typically use it to work with objects and iterate over those. Now let's take a look at the while loop. The while loop essentially just runs indefinitely until a certain condition is met. So let's say we went over here and did while, I don't know. First of all, let's comment this out. Let's say we had a variable x here, called it 0. And let's say we do while x is less than 100. All right, let's do a smaller number. Let's do console.log of x. Okay. So essentially, this is gonna give us a infinite loop because our condition is never gonna evaluate to false. So our condition right now, while x is less than 10, so while 0 is less than 10, it's gonna console log x for us. So 0 each time. So it's just gonna do that indefinitely. Like x is never gonna actually be greater than 10 for this to evaluate to false. So if we run this right now, we're gonna get an infinite loop. We get 0 printing non-stop. Let's control C out of that. And let's go ahead and add our iterator so we don't have an infinite loop anymore. Cool. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 9. Yes, that's mainly it for the while loop. We just need the while keyword, our condition in the parentheses, and we need to make sure to have an iterator somewhere. That way we don't end up with an infinite loop. The loop actually ends at a particular point. Okay. If we did while x is greater than 10, this is never going to run. Cool. And now this is like a perfect transition to the next thing we're going to cover, the do while loop. So the do while loop is essentially the exact same thing as a while loop. The only difference is the do while loop is always going to run at least one time. The while loop, for example, just now you saw that we changed the condition. Since it's evaluated to false the first time, it just never ran. The do while loop is always going to run at least one time. So when working with a do while loop, so we need the keyword do. Next thing, we open up a bracket here, which is going to be our block of code. So if we wanted to do a console.log, so essentially I'm going to do the exact same thing we had in our while loop. Console.log x. And then we're going to do while x is greater than 10. So essentially we have the exact same condition we had for a while loop, except we have it in a do while loop right now. All right, let's see what happens if we run this. You notice how we get 0 printed to the console. Again, the do while loop is always going to run at least one time, even if the condition is false. So it logged x while x is less than 10. X is 0 right now, which is less than 10, which means our condition evaluated to false, yet it still ran for the do while loop as opposed to the while loop, it didn't. All right, so that's mainly it for the do while loop. The last things we're going to cover is a break statement and continue statement. So how we're going to go ahead about demonstrating the break statement is we're going to come here and make another for loop. So remember, for our for loops, we have 3 parts. One is our initializer. 2 is our condition. And then we just increment our variable. 0. For example, let's do if I is equal to 2, it's going to break. Else it console.log x. Okay. So if we run this, we get x is not defined true. And now if we run this, we get 0 and 1 printed to the console. Cool. And that's because we have this break here. So it ran for the first iteration for 0, then it ran for 1. As soon as it reaches 2, it hit that break statement, so it just stopped that entire, it stopped the execution of that entire for loop. But let's say we had a continue statement. Essentially, it's just going to skip the execution for that one iteration, okay? So it's only going to skip out of printing 2 to the console. It should print 0, 1, 3, 4, and so on. Cool. All right, so that's mainly it for the continue and break statements. Yeah, and that's mainly all I wanted to go over for this video on loops in JavaScript. We went over the for loop, the for in loop, for of loop, the while loop, the do while loop, the break statement, and the continue statement. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.